Welcome back to the garage, another HHR video. I just thought it would be overkill, which it is. I thought it'd be a waste of money, which it kind of is, but at the same time, if you're a follower of this channel, you know I enjoy a nice bolt-on upgrade. I don't like fabbing. I don't like figuring things out in that regard. I mean, I will, but at the same time, it is nice to have a bolt-on upgrade. And that's what the Brembos do for the HHR here. My HHR came with an automatic, which meant, as far as my research goes, you could not get it with a limited slip diff and Brembos, the performance pack as they call it. You had to have a manual to get these. So what I did was basically denounced it. I said, I'm never going to do that. What do I need Brembos for? That's crazy. But then as you scour the internet and you see these coming up, as they appear in a genuine Delco box, it's like, it's interesting because it is tempting. So what I found, I'll go through this part by part here. I found the calipers, the caliper pieces, basically the pins and then the retention bit there, in brake pads. That was all for sale from ZZP. On eBay they sell it, and they're brand new. I mean, these are legit Brembo. They got the line bolts on the back there. I mean, this is the real deal. They bolt right on. There's no bracketry to hold the caliper on. So what you do is you take off the factory caliper, the factory bracket, and you bolt it right back onto the, call it the steering knuckle, the hub, whatever you want to call it. It bolts right onto there. And I'll show you this here. They also gave power stop pads with it, and those drop in through the top if you want them to, which most times that's kind of the point of a Brembo brake or a performance brake. I had to get the lines. Now, a lot of people say you can bend the factory lines, but I just went with an aftermarket line. It's apparently a little longer, and I'm going to compare it once I get it all kind of apart here. And that came with the copper washers here. And then finally I needed rotors, which I just got. These are Delco rotors, just got them off of Amazon. I'll put a link for all this stuff below. Before I get tearing into this though, I did want to show the story on these bolts here, so let me cut to that. I'll explain that. One part of this that I wanted to show, and I wasn't necessarily, we'll say, committed to spending $10 a bolt from GM if I didn't have to. The pink one here is off of my stock caliper. Really, you're mounting the caliper. This is for the bracket that holds the stock caliper. The Brembos go on a little differently. You just bolt the whole caliper to the, we'll call it the knuckle, the hub, whatever you want to call it. It just bolts on. There's no like bracket for it. Now, what I read was the Brembo Bolt, which is the silver one, is a little bit longer. And when we line them up, you can see it is just a smidgen longer. And I mean, if you're, without them rolling away here, it's very, I mean, not by much at all. So I'm thinking, which a lot of people have done, I've read, we shouldn't have a problem reusing the stockers. I just bought one Brembo Bolt to compare. And I think I'm going to stick with the stockers and, maybe just use that one for whatever. But they aren't really any different. And the threading matches and all that. So you can take your stock bolts off, it looks like, and have no issues bolting it on there. I mean, it's going to have enough to grab. It's going to be fine. It's interesting, though. It is a different size head on there, which doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, it's not really that much crazy difference of anything except just a different backing on there. And I mean, the other end too is this doesn't go to the Brembo. Like, it's going to be bolt head, car, like the knuckle, whatever you want to call it, the mount, and then the Brembo. So I mean, it does thread into the Brembo, but you have something in between, so it's not like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason why they did the bigger bolt, but I don't think it's necessarily going to matter for $10 a bolt or whatever people charge for that part number. But I'll put the part number below in case you want to do it. But I think I'm gonna gamble and use the smaller bolt to save $30 on this whole thing. So So here we go. Gonna take off our fancy forged wheels here and start on the driver's side and see what's what. Hopefully everything goes back together as planned. Here is our stock setup. Here's the line, which they say the Brembo one's just a smidge longer. The bleeder screw there. You really just have to take this off. You don't have to do these bolts on the top here. You have to do the bolts on the bracket, which are those ones right there. And now that's directly where the Brembo is going to bolt on. So assuming the line doesn't give me any trouble, which I don't think it will. I mean, this, if you watch my first video, this thing came out of Florida. It's, as you can see, it's super clean underneath. No major issues or anything like that, but no rust. I'm going to take the two big bolts off first. I'm going to see what's what. I feel like maybe the rotor's a smidge bigger too, but I'll lay them side by side and compare. Well, let's assume that these are going to fit. These are the rotors that were recommended for this setup. This is what came off the car. This is pretty interesting. Definitely a bigger rotor is going to go on with the Brembo setup here. It's kind of cool. I mean, you can almost visually tell it's bigger. Need to be cleaned, obviously, but new one, old one. Kind of cool. One trick I like to do here is I like to put a little grease on the hub here just to keep it from rusting anymore and make it so nothing gets stuck on there. This isn't going to see any snow duty, but at the same time, it's a nice little insurance policy. So pardon the old t-shirt rag here, but stock line, longer Brembo line. So if we get them kind of lined up and stretched out, the Brembo is clearly longer, which everybody said it was. So gonna get that put in place and then get the caliper going before I drain my master cylinder of brake fluid here. There was a little clip, retainer clip holding it to the car, and then a hard line and banjo bolts and all that. I am gonna reuse the stock caliper bolts, and they gave new copper washers with that too. One goes on each side, so hopefully it all goes back together here. That's it though. Everything is out and apart, and we're just need to reassemble now. So there's our Brembo installed. No pads yet, obviously, nothing else, but now I just got to connect the line and see how they bleed. That's the next part. I'm gonna make sure that's done right, obviously, and then we'll get the pads in and go from there. Kind of cool. Bolts right on though, super easy. Looks cool. Wish they were red or something, but that's the way they came right there. All right, and there we go. I had to refresh my Brembo memory. My old Subaru had them, and I kind of forgot. It's once you know it, it's super easy. I mean, you can see the pads are just held in by those pins and then that little retainer clip on top, which I showed you before, and they just sort of tap in there. They're like a force fit. Some of them have, you know, the pins in them, the like the Carter pins to hold them in, the cotter pins, whatever you call them. You know, but either way, that's it. It's in. Now we just have to bleed, and from what I've read, you do inner first, and then you move to the outer. So let's see how these bleed, and then should be good to go. So I wanted to snap cut as I started to edit this video, all the footage you just recently saw. I didn't really film a conclusion on the Brembos, and I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of insight into these here, because actually I've had them on there now for about 8 months now of use with the Brembo. So let me set this camera up on the HHR here, and I'll tell you my final thoughts on this thing. Okay, so believe it or not, since we did that, the HHR was barely out. Like that was spring-ish, like April. And it's out. It was driven all summer, all fall. It's now winter as I'm posting this. And I wanted to kind of just, I was parking it and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't post this video. It's irrelevant though, because if you're watching this, you're probably, you know, just wondering how these work. I noticed a few times, now I have not, and I probably will not track this car. Brembos are kind of overkill for daily driving. I more did it just because it's a fun, not overly expensive upgrade, just to make your car kind of better overall. The Brembos were a direct bolt-on. You can see all the parts. I'm going to list them down below that I did. You can see them in the video here. The only thing that I noticed that was any form of downside, which isn't the Brembo's fault as far as I'm concerned, when it's cold or after it rained or like in the morning, there is a squeaky pad and then it goes away. I think that's just the rotors though. But overall, I mean, it cleaned it up a little bit. Now, I will say, if your non-Brembo car is working fine, this isn't a necessity. But if you're going to track it, I think it is, because it's a bolt-on and it's easy. Now, the other thing, though, is if you're like, say you have a leaky caliper or you're just looking to improve some looks, like instead of painting your factory non-Brembos, this isn't a crazy idea to do because it all just kind of goes right on there. But overall, I'm happy with it. I think it kind of took the car to, we'll say, another level, just as far as like going from stock to this. And they came on this car from the factory, and I love upgrades like that. So what do you think about the brakes?
Good. And these are some facts about our little brake friends.
What are your facts?
Well, what you just said.
Oh, what I just said. Okay, yeah. So that's going to do it for this video. If you have any questions, any comments, put them below, and I'll check on this here and there and see. But I think overall it was a pretty simple, inexpensive upgrade. And the latest I've heard on this, which is pretty cool, O'Reilly's actually will give you a remanufactured, redone Brembo caliper for like $90, which is amazingly cool for a brake caliper that's a Brembo. Now, they don't say Brembo and they're rebuilt in that, but still, it's a pretty cheap spare to have in your garage. So I think I'm going to do that as well, just to have another part for the inventory of this car. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the Brembos. Check out my other HHR videos. I got a few more coming in the winter here. And subscribe for more on this car. We're right at about 60,000 miles, so it's plugging along great, and it's been a fun little adventure for the first year of ownership. So, all right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time here at Rubber City Motoring.